Welcome, everyone, to RB1 Colon, a fantasy football podcast, part of the Fake Teams podcast channel. I am your humble host and rebuilder of the Devin Funchess hype train, Pete Rogers. And it's been a while, but I am joined by all of the guys. We have resident old man and the duck father, Clark Barnes, the working girl and Jordan Smith superfan, Jordan Love superfan, Jordan Smith. I mean, Jordan is probably also a fan of himself, too. I would assume that. And ginger clean shaven man and political wildcard, Nick Bodiford. Guys, how are we doing today?
Doing great, Pete.
Great. Good, Pete. How you doing?
I am doing well. My big accomplishment of the day was putting in our AC units all by myself. I'm feeling particularly manly today. I lifted them out of the basement. I put them into the window. I had to jimmy out the screen, and now our apartment is a brisk 70 degrees because it's been running full blast at set at 60, and it's running at full blast, and we're still in the mid 70s in terms of a temperature.
Good manning, Pete. Good manning.
It is
Save your
hot.
face. You hate to jack up the electricity bill, but a dehumidifier might help you out a little bit.
Yeah, we'll probably get one of those too. I'm hoping that it's just going to rain at some point, and that'll help break some of this humidity. But it is 85 degrees and quite warm. And I was telling Clark this before we got on the show. Bert, since everything is still closed because we're at shelter in place in Michigan, Bert hasn't been groomed in a long time, so he is very covered. He's very covered in fur, and he's very hot all of the time. Which, as you can see, as he trots over here, leads to a lot of panting and just lying about the house, looking very, pitiable. Becca is sure that he's dying of heat stroke.
Dog's fine, Pete.
He'll be fine. Look at him just walking about happily. All right. Well, we've got finally some football to talk about. We got some news that we're going to hit on. And then, since we're in the off season, since maybe it seems like things are kind of ramping up to possibly there being a football season starting mildly on time, we're going to start looking at positions and doing some deep dives into positions. We'll start with quarterbacks today, and then we'll progress through in the future weeks. But let's start with some news. Headlining the news, this is huge for Nick. I know Nick was really looking forward to, really thinks this signing is going to be the change that the Seahawks need in order to get back to the Super Bowl and win one. Seahawks signed Carlos Hyde as a veteran backup. The biggest thing, Clark can attest to this, Carlos Hyde, fantasy superstar, quietly had 1,000 yards last year with the Texans, coming in to kick Chris Carson out of the starting lineup and take over the gig in Seattle. But really, the biggest thing to take away from here is that clearly the Seahawks are not really comfortable or confident at where Rashad Penny is right now in his recovery from ACL tear.
Yeah, I think it's super bizarre, too, because right after the signing, it came out that Hyde is recovering, I think, from a torn labrum surgery.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I
don't need a labrum.
Yeah,
right.
Labrum schmabrum.
I mean, technically you can just play with a harness, but I think Clark and I differ a little bit here, but I think every touch given to Carlos Hyde is just a waste of a down, and you might as well punt it. But this is a very Pete Carroll move. Bring in a one-dimensional banger who is not very good, and feed him a bunch of touches so he looks good in the box score.
Yeah, the hope for Carson owners or potential Carson owners is that Carlos Hyde has been brought in for the incredibly obvious rush downs where everyone else is too tired to get the ball. Hopefully it will not be a Bill O'Brien-like move where Carlos Hyde is being brought in to be a key piece of the backfield. Coaching catnip, Carlos Hyde.
It is worth touching. Yeah, he's like a junior Frank Gore. But Pete, to your point about Rashad Penny, yeah, I think the report at this point is that he's going to start the year on top. So he's out for 8 weeks.
Which is a bummer. I mean, he looked good for a stretch of time there before he ultimately tore his ACL. And the Seattle backfield is one that we've perpetually been someone just stay healthy and like take control of it, because we know how much Pete Carroll loves to run it. Like Chris Carson has shown plenty of fantasy potential. Rashad Penny came in and was like looking like he was going to take over that backfield and be the starting back and have fantasy potential. Neither of those guys could stay healthy. Now you throw Carlos Hyde in the mix, who seems like I think Frank Gore Jr. is a perfect comp for Carlos Hyde at this point in his career, where he's just going to latch on to a different NFL team every year and ultimately steal away touches and probably finish with like 500 to 700 yards and a couple touchdowns. So neither doesn't give you fantasy relevance in and of itself, but also does enough to deter or detract from any guys in that actual backfield. Moving on in the news, there's been some discussions. This isn't fantasy relevant, but I think it's a fun thing to talk about, because why not? It seems like the 4th and 15 talks to replace the onside kick is maybe gaining a little traction. It might actually come to fruition. I personally am all for this, just because I think 4th and 15 to play it out as opposed to an onside kick is a lot more fun, given the rules that they've put into onside kicks and how an onside kick just doesn't really ever seem to work. I know teams were starting to get more creative with how they were actually going to kick the ball in order to try to recover them. But I am all for like a 4th and 15, and let's see some kind of crazy shenanigan plays that these coaches draw up for, in order to like not only ensure that you get that play, but also like who's like, let's, I don't know if they're going to put in rules or stipulations saying that there's only a certain time frame that you can like implement this. But like, why not just be like, pull a Sean Payton or a John Harbaugh as both coaches, who I could be like, we're just going to go for the 4th and 15, like every, maybe once a quarter or something, just to kind of like keeps things spicy and kind of see if we can quickly tack on an easy extra offensive possession.
Can you explain how the 4th and 15 comes into play here? I'm unfamiliar with this.
Well, Nick, that's really good that you bring it up. Let me just slowly preamble before I open up the news article.
While we're looking for that, I will offer the dissenting opinion. It should be really, really hard for you to get a free possession. And I know that the change to the kickoff rules has made it even harder. But I like that a onside kick is such an unusual and difficult play. You have to remember here, the other team has built such a good lead by playing hard, that to take that away for kind of the, like, I don't know, introduction to steroids being okay to baseball, whereas home runs just became what every other batter did 6 times. I don't know. That feels like too much of a big swing to change the game to me.
Yeah, basically. Oh, go ahead, Jordan.
I think it would add like definitely more drama to the game, because like a 4th and 15 is probably easier to convert than an onside kick. Like unless you have like a really bad backup tight end named Andrew Corliss, like that onside kick is going to go to the team receiving the kick almost all the time. So that unless you're like shocking the other team, like, oh, surprise onside kick,
Yeah.
So maybe like to Clark's point, if they did like 4th and 20 or something like that, just to extend it a little bit more, because I already think 4th and 15 would be much more convertible than getting your onside kick back.
So stats and information, bringing it right up. 2019, only 8 of 63 onside kick attempts in the NFL were recovered. So that's 12%, 12.7%. And there were only 7 4th and 15s attempted last year, and 2 were converted, which is still a higher percentage at 28.6%. So that's just from last year, where it's like, it seems like maybe there's a higher percentage you can convert that 4th and 15, but the rule would basically be like, if you wanted to, instead of kicking off, you would just go for a 4th and 15 at, let's see what the AAF said. It looks like they're just going to take the AAF's rule play, but I don't remember. 4th and 12 play from the 28-yard line is what the AAF did. So,
yeah, that's a pretty daring move. Even though the odds are low, I think I kind of echo Clark's sentiment here, where just like really giving somebody another possession is a pretty tilting, like game tilting move. I don't know if I like it, but they did. I think 2 or 3 years ago they altered the kickoff rules in some way that basically made onside kicks impossible.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just and they moved the whole kickoff line forward. So it was just a whole shindig that makes it much more difficult.
Which is boring, right? So there's, that exciting Sunday night game. We're all stoked. They do the fireworks and the stupid song and everybody's waving to the flag. And then it's the kickoff and it goes out of the end zone and it's commercial. So, like,
what if that team
sucks.
just comes out and it goes for 4th and 15? Like, we're taking immediate possession.
I don't know. I just want to remember, like, some of these rule changes suck.
Yeah. No,
right?
the kickoff,
So,
making the kickoff basically an automatic touchback is just like, well, what are we doing here? Why do we have a kickoff then?
The only fun thing about that is Bill Belichick going, great, I'm going to teach my kicker to kick it real high.
Which then, like, Stephen Gostkowski struggled kicking field goals that first season because he spent so much time, like, making sure he didn't kick touchbacks, that his field goals were all short. So you reap what you sow, Bill. So much for being a great coach. Am I right, you guys?
Oh, yeah. Nailed him.
He's burning right now. Finally in the news, Joe Flacco signed a 1-year deal with the Jets. So good for him.
I missed that one.
I mean, the fantasy relevance of it is mind-blowing, Jordan. So I'm a little amazed that you missed it. He's coming for Sam Darnold's job.
We got some potential backup situations for some Flacco Seagulls. The Jets. I don't know.
There's something there
out of this, Pete.
The Jets are just like a dumping ground for former Baltimore Ravens, apparently. So
just like the state that they represent, because they're New Jersey, not New York. Sorry,
it's true. It's true. They do play in New Jersey.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. That's the news. NFL be more exciting, I guess. Not our faults. But now we will be more exciting. We are going to talk about quarterbacks today, and we're going to start looking to the 2020 quarterback season and just talking fantasy. We've got 5 different categories that we're going to hit on. We have who we think is a lock for a top 5 player, someone who won't live up to the hype, someone who not enough people are talking about, a bold prediction, and our number 1 target, someone who we are looking at no matter where they are in the draft, trying to get in most of our leagues. And we're going to do this. We're going to do quarterbacks today. Next week, we'll do running backs and then wide receivers, then tight ends, just to give a kind of a holistic look at the position and kind of what we're feeling currently as we head into it. So let's start with our guys who we think is going to be a lock for a top 5 pick. Jordan, let's start with you. Who's the guy? Which quarterback are you just certain is going to be a top 5 guy this year, barring injuries? We're going to take injuries out, assuming no one gets hurt.
Top 5? I thought we were doing top 12.
Actually, that was for the player who you think won't live up to the hype, but we rephrased that to someone who won't live up to the hype rather than who's going to fall out of the top 12. Because initially I was like, hey, who's going to fall out of the top 10 along with who do you think is a lock for the top 5? And then Clark and Nick were like, Pete, that's a dumb idea. What you really should do is say top 12. And then we rephrased it to just being won't live up to the hype. But who's a top 5 lock for you, Jordan? All that to say.
No worries. I'll just actually
peeling back the onion curtain there.
I'm going to lean into who I got. I originally pegged this guy as the top 12, but this is also kind of a cop-out too. I'm going to go with Matthew Stafford coming in, mostly because he was out of the top 12 last year after only playing 8 games. So there's a good chance of just if he plays every single game that he will obviously score a lot of points. But his average in points per game before he got hurt was 4th among QBs. So if that's something that he can maintain over the course of the season, he would be a top 5. He has the 8th easiest strength of schedule per Fantasy Pros as well. And this is also kind of hoping that, Hawkinson, who was pretty good in a couple games last year, not a whole lot, but if he takes another step forward and, maybe DeAndre Swift is a nice little piece for him to spread the ball around, I would put him in the top 5.
Damn. I'm looking to the future. I have him for another category, but Matt Stafford being a top 5 player would be, I think there is a realm in which it happens, and I think that would be a great get for anyone because he's currently going as they think like the QB 15 or so. So there's certainly plenty of value there, and it's not too far off that he could finish a top 5 quarterback this year.
Yeah, I like the idea, and as a value, since he was hurt a little bit last year, it's a really easy thing to just look at the counting stats that we saw from last year and miss and forget about Matt Stafford. We know that his coach wants to run the ball. They drafted a pretty good running back 2 years ago and then spent a lot of draft capital on a running back again this year. And those can sometimes be the things that stack up against a good quarterback and create that insane value that 2 months into the season, we turn around and go, oh yeah, no kidding. Matthew Stafford's good at football. We should have taken him much higher.
So, I don't think that we ended up talking about the Lions when we did the Warren Sharp strength of schedule the other week. They come in with the 17th softest pass blend or blend of pass defenses this year. I don't know that that's really troubling them. I mean, 17th is middle of the road. It's pretty much like, yeah, you're going to face average NFL defenses. To Jordan's point about him finishing with the fourth highest average points per game last year, this offense is so interesting. It shoots itself in the foot just by Patricia thinking that he needs to run so much for play action to work and for his deep shots to work. And then, lo and behold, they throw deep. Guess what? It works. Kenny Golladay, Marvin Jones, another year, TJ Hawkinson, and then adding a pass catching back in DeAndre Swift. It all sets the table for a really nice season for Matthew Stafford. I think that he carries some injury risk. Like Clark said, he was out last year with injury. I definitely like him as like a mid to late round guy. He's coming off the board. He was the QB 14, which is great. Like, you're getting him as a QB 2, and I do think that he will finish as a back end quarterback 1. I think top 5 is super aggressive, but the table is set for a really nice year for him.
Yeah. Clark, who's a top 5 lock for you this year?
So I had a tough time with this one. Kind of picked a lot of guys that I just like to talk about. So I think that head coaching changes the NFL change teams more than any other sport that we look at. And I think that Kevin Stefanski going to Cleveland is going to be the salve that the Browns were looking for to finally put all of this together. We've seen Mayfield play really well, and the Browns have a ton of talent around him. Jarvis Landry, Odell Beckham, Nick Chubb, and the serviceable but not great Austin Hooper. I think a zone rush scheme and play action is going to be fantastic for Baker Mayfield. Odell Beckham streaking down the field. Jarvis Landry being able to be the relief valve, I think, is going to be huge for them. So I think this year is the year that we see the Browns finally get over their front office incompetence, and I think Baker Mayfield slips into the top 5 QBs.
Yeah, I love that one. I think he's the most likely quarterback to take like a big jump from where he's currently being drafted. According to, let me look, what is this? NFC, which is like someone told me on Twitter is like the only thing to look at for ADPs. So I'm looking
to contradict
ADPs.
that, I like looking at best ball ADP as a mark of where people are liking guys, not necessarily where they're going to be drafted. And Mayfield's number 15, QB 15 in that.
That's where he is here too. And so I think, he's another guy who we know last year's narrative, and I think there's a huge chance that he bounces back in a big way. We've seen what he can do in an offense that's suited to him. And I think a top 5 play for him is not bad at all.
Yeah, I have Baker coming up in a different category, actually, but it contingents on a lot of the same things that Clark says, is like getting a new offensive coordinator that'll hopefully play more to this offense's strengths with the pieces that they brought in and the pieces that they already have.
I think it's super fun, bold pick, Clark. I like it a lot. This is a team that we did talk about on the Strength of Schedule show 2 weeks ago, where the Browns came in with the 5th softest pass blend defense slate. So I like this a lot. I think that a top 5 ranking is super aggressive, but like, let's go. I would have him in the top 8, and I think that that's way ahead of the market. Like, as we have seen, depending on which site we're looking at for ADP, like I think Fantasy Pros has him at 13. So I think we're well ahead of the market on this one, and I like it a lot.
Nice. Nick, who's your top 5 lock?
Probably not a surprise, but Kyler Murray. He, similar to Stafford, he doesn't have the like greatest strength of schedule this year. They're in the early 20s. But when you compare it to last year, he finished, I believe, as overall QB 7, and obviously overall point scoring it's not Clark's favorite scoring category, but he was, I think, the QB 11 in points per game. And they had a much more challenging pass defense schedule last season. It was around like number 28, I think, for Warren Sharp. So you get a slightly softer slate of pass defenses. You add DeAndre Hopkins, you've got a full year or full off season of Kenyon Drake to absorb the playbook. Like there was an interview that he did, I think it was with the Roto World guys, where he was saying that Kyler was explaining what he was supposed to do in the huddle pre-play. So when you have a pass catching back of that talent who is so successful, literally learning the play during the game, and you give him some time to adjust to the playbook now, I think we can expect big things from Kyler Murray. And also his TD rate was quite a bit was low, and that is something that tends to stabilize too.
Yeah, I think of the guys outside the top 5, this is the most likely to happen. So number 7 overall as a rookie, and the counting stats isn't my favorite thing, but it is a good data point. So to be able to do that is fantastic. Just a quarterback's second year, he didn't have a good 5-game stretch and then fizzle out. He had a pretty solid season on a team that is not good. His team is not good, and they added DeAndre Hopkins, and it's going to be really exciting to watch the Cardinals. I was super down on Kyler Murray. I got tired of everyone talking about how great he was going to be, and I was pleasantly surprised to be wrong. He's going to be really interesting to watch in year 2.
Well, something I failed to mention is just they added Josh Jones in the second round. Like we all thought
for offensive line help, yeah.
Yeah, we all thought he was going in the first round. They've seriously bolstered their offensive line. Anyway, I'm really excited about it.
No, yeah, that's a good point. My top 5 lock. We've talked about this guy a lot on the show. I don't think it's a surprise. I think this is Dak Prescott's year to be QB1, like without a doubt. We already know all the weapons that the Cowboys have. We know that this offense is going to be in his favor. It's a contract year. He's going to, want to earn that $45 million per year that he says he's worth, which, hey, Dak, go get your money. You do you. So yeah, and he has a high rushing floor to complement the fact that he can also obviously can get it, spread it around in the passing game. I just think that Dak Prescott you are going to get what you pay for with Dak. He's currently going as a QB4. Like I take that no problem.
I've been a huge fan of him all offseason, especially after they took CeeDee Lamb. That shows that, a smart, informed, analytical approach to the game. I really hope that we just get some sort of public acknowledgement that Kellen Moore is going to retain rights to play calling. If so, then I will be serious. I said before, like I'm trying to judge whether or not I'm going to have him as the QB1. I don't think I will. I mean, I think we know Andy Reid's play calling is phenomenal, and you got Patrick Mahomes, so that's a lot to argue with there. And I don't think I can put him ahead of Lamar Jackson. But I think that if we get confirmation that is going to be the case, that Kellen Moore gets the reins to the offense, then I think that there will be plenty of weeks this season where he ends up being ranked and finishes as the overall QB1.
Yeah, and I think I'm aligned with what Nick's saying here. I kind of feel like there's a really obvious number 1 and 2, and I don't care what order you have them in with Mahomes and Lamar Jackson. We said barring injury at the beginning, so I'll just say it one more time. I think the quest for number 3 is really interesting, and Dak has been moving in the right direction for his entire career. Super solid team around him. The only problem for Dak Prescott may be that the Cowboys may not rely on him quite as much to be a powerhouse, and I'll take that chance. He's a super solid floor quarterback guy with his rushing ability and with all those weapons around him. So paying the number 4 QB for him is a little pricey, but I think you'll get close to value on that pick.
Yeah, I like, from a fantasy perspective, I kind of like Lamar, Pat Mahomes, and Dak like in the top tier as far as getting one of those guys. I also really like, we talked about this already with the target spread, coming from Jason Witten and Randall Cobb. I can't believe I almost forgot his name. Randall Cobb. They had like a very high amount of targets.
They each had like 80 targets each, which is incredible to me.
Yeah, so like CeeDee Lamb should get a good amount of targets. I like Michael Gallup a lot coming in for his 3rd season. Even their tight end, Blake Jarwin.
Yep.
Yeah, Blake Jarwin. I always want to confuse him with Connor Barwin, but that's not it. I like Dak this year.
Yeah. All right, we're going to move on to players who are quarterbacks who we don't think will live up to the hype. And I want to start this off because I want to touch on who Nick talked about. I am here for the Kyler Murray, like, MVP bandwagon. Like, let's do this. Let's watch Kyler Murray be amazing in a second year in Cliff Kingsbury's offense. Let's see him with DeAndre Hopkins. Let's have the Arizona Cardinals' offense just become this unstoppable force. I personally just think that the QB3, that the investment you would have to make in order to get him is too much. I think that it is not normal what we've seen from Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson these last 2 years, where in your sophomore year, you suddenly become an MVP candidate. Like that, I don't think that's not the norm. The norm is that it takes a little bit more time in order to like ascend to becoming the best quarterback in the league in your second year of football, both in the real game and in fantasy. I think we've been spoiled by what Mahomes and Jackson have done. I think people are super hyped about Murray. I think that's rightfully so. I think he's going to be a QB1 at some point in his career, even if it's next year in 2021 or 2022 when he has a full offseason with all these new weapons and to kind of get everything onto the table. For me personally, QB3 for him is too rich. I think I would much prefer Dak, and I explained why. I would take Russell Wilson over Kyler in terms of just like. Or I guess I would say I would wait for Russell Wilson rather than reaching for Kyler Murray, drafting him as the QB3 going in, pick 46, which is the third round, middle of the third round. That's a lot for me, or early fourth round.
Yeah, I mean, I have to admit, while I am excited about Kyler Murray and would not be at all surprised to see him number 3 and do think he's the most obvious candidate to move into the top 5, I wouldn't pay that for him.
Yeah.
Just really because I like the top 2 so much that I'll either spend some good draft capital on the top 2 or just wait.
Yeah.
I think, Pete, I'm confused as to this category. Is it not, we're talking about falling out of the top 12?
So take it for whatever you want it to be. I didn't know if we were doing the falling out of the top 12 or just like a player who we aren't totally buying their ADP currently. So
okay.
Whatever we're feeling. For me, I just wanted to touch on the fact that at Kyler Murray at the QB3 going in this beginning of the fourth round is a cost that I right now I'm not willing to pay, which is a bummer because I really was in on Kyler Murray and I would have loved to have had him everywhere, but he's just become too expensive for my liking.
So Fantasy Pros, has the aggregate Yahoo, MFL 10s, FFC. They've got him as the quarterback 6 coming off the board. I think that he's a lock for the top 5. But it's sort of being on brand here. I'm not going to pay for any of these guys. I'm going to wait and draft. Well, we'll get to that. We'll get to who I'm going to take as who is currently in the QB2 range that I know is going to finish as a quarterback 1. Forgive the full language there, but I wouldn't pay for Kyler. I wouldn't pay for Lamar Jackson or Patrick Mahomes. The cost to acquire them is so high that you're nuking the rest of your roster in doing so. So I suppose that I agree with you, although I think he's going to smash box scores.
I did this just so that I could make Nick say that Kyler Murray is going to be a top 5 quarterback, but I also agree with Pete that Kyler Murray is not going to live up to the hype. I have Nick in a fundamental pickle.
I like the Kyler Murray pick, but I'm of the same mindset where like there are 1 or 2 guys that, I will go for them at the top of the draft because then basically you've cornered the market on fantasy points for some of these guys. But you can get a ton of value later in the draft, especially with the 12-team league. There are plenty of guys that you can go back and get late rather than using a third or fourth on somebody who is just going to be good enough to be in the top 5.
Yeah. All right. So Nick, did you talk about a quarterback in the top 12 for 2019 who you think is going to fall out for 2020?
I got one, and we're pulverizing the dead horse at this point, but it's Aaron Rodgers. I mean, the Packers are, and I don't want to rub this into his face more than is necessary, but they're showing that they're like, we're just going to run the ball. It's crazy. I don't know why they're doing it, but they're dead set on it. It's sort of similar to Matt Patricia, where they think that you have to establish the run in order to throw well. And Greg Costell, he's done some fun film breakdown stuff and so philosophical breakdowns of the Packers. And his analysis is that LaFleur's biggest issue is that Rodgers plays he plays out of not sequence, but he doesn't play within the system. He's going to audible. He's going to do whatever he wants, whatever his mood is. And don't get me wrong, I think Aaron Rodgers is phenomenal. But they want a guy who will play within the structure of the plays that Matt LaFleur designs, and they're investing all of this capital in the run game, and they're not doing shit for the passing game. So I believe he finished as like the quarterback 10.
Last year.
Year. Yeah, he was number 10 in overall scoring and in average scoring. He's a bit low. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Anyways, early teens in game-to-game scoring. But yeah, I think I consider this a layup. Jordan.
Oh, I'll talk about Aaron Rodgers for a different category because
Me
disagree.
Too.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Saucy. It's okay. Nick, by the way, Jordan's okay with your Aaron Rodgers slander because he's a big fan of Jordan Love. He's a super fan. Jordan Love's biggest supporter.
Right.
Jordan loves love.
Jordan loves his love. Is Jordan Smith. Too many Jordans, too many loves. Clark, who's falling out of the top 12 for you? Or / what I did, who's not living up to the hype? / whatever you want to make this category.
Yeah, third option. So I think the top 5 QBs matter and everything else just comes down to streaming. So I'm not going to say the top 12, but a guy who falls out of the top 5, who's being drafted as a top 5 quarterback right now, is Russell Wilson. Not based on his talent or not based on my like for him for any reason other than I think Russ slipped into the top 5 last year because of some key injuries that let his counting stats get up there. And that while we know that the Packers want to run the ball, and they may try to do that this season as evidenced by everything that they did in the draft and what they tried to do last year, we know that Pete Carroll is going to run the ball regardless of what happens to the football team. He's been doing it for half of a decade. So I think Russell Wilson is likely to slip from his position only down to like 8 or 9, but to have some of those real stinker games, they're going to make you real disappointed if you spend some premium draft capital on him.
That's a good one. I agree with that. I think that he is. Well, I just said that I was going to take him over Kyler Murray. Oh my God, I've put myself in my own conundrum pickle. Damn it!
Tying him in knots.
So since 2016, Wilson's finished as the QB 11, the QB 1, the QB 9, and then last year I think the QB 4. He just gets it done. He's the second coming of Drew Brees. He's being terribly wasted, and I understand not taking him simply because there are times when he gets scripted out of games a little bit, and you might only be getting like 200 yards and 2 TDs. That's not the kind of finish that you want to have when you are, taking somebody as early as all of these quarterbacks go. And same answer here kind of for Kyler Murray. Yeah, I'm not going to spend the draft capital to get him. I do think he'll give you stealing games, but it's a personal thing for me too. I don't want him.
Yeah, and I want to be clear. If I'm starting a team, Russell Wilson might be my second quarterback that I would take. But yeah, just for keeping it spicy, out of the top 5 this year, Russell Wilson.
This show is all about spice. Jordan, who's your quarterback who's going to fall out of the top 12 / won't live up to the hype / fall out of the top 5?
So this one's just falling out of the top 12. This might not shock anybody because you might not even know he was within the top 12 last year. But it's going to be Matt Ryan. He was already fringe at 8th last year for their QB 8, according to Fantasy Pros. He has the 26th easiest schedule, according to them. So that's a pretty tough one. It's looking like for the Falcons this year. Last season, he got sacked a career high 48 times, which isn't great for a quarterback who he's not old. He's not, out of the league yet, but that's not what you want. And in 12 seasons that he's played in the league, he's thrown double-digit picks 9 times. So there's a pretty high chance that he will just continue to throw double-digit interceptions, especially sacks aren't an indication of pressure. Likely, if he's getting sacked that many times, the pressure is just a lot worse. So if he continues to be under fire and under pressure, then that's not going to be great. He has good weapons, all that, but I think those weapons aren't going to stop him from making mistakes or feeling pressure.
Yeah, we talked about this team on the Strength of Schedule show. They got the 30th most difficult, or third most difficult, I guess, pass defense slate set up this year for Warren Sharp. I think that this offense, though, is going to be kind of interesting to watch. There are a number of times in history where we've had like a quarterback duo or a quarterback with two receiver duo who just routinely blow up the box score every week. And I think that this is going to be the case with Julio and Calvin Ridley, because I mean, Hayden Hurst is still a big old question mark, but outside of that, it's not going to be Justin Hardy or Russell Gage. But yeah, I think he's probably being overdrafted just a bit.
Cool beans.
Riding that Todd Gurley wave.
Yeah, buddy. All right, we got 3 more categories we are going to get to, but before we do that, we are going to take a quick ad break. All right, we are back. We have 3 more categories that we're going to talk about quarterbacks for 2020. We're going to rattle through these, speed it up a little bit. A quarterback who not enough people are talking about. Nick, why don't you start us off? Who is a quarterback that you think should be getting a little more pub for 2020?
Yeah, so I'm super pumped about this one. Carson Wentz. He's currently going for Fantasy Pros as the quarterback 11, but per Sharp schedule, Philadelphia gets the 10th softest pass defense blend slate of 2020. Deshaun Jackson is going to be as healthy as he'll ever be. They drafted Hightower and Rieger. Those are both 2 downfield passing game options. Each tight end is another year. I mean, not that Ertz needs another year in the NFL, but the tight ends are improved. Dallas, help me out here. Dallas Goedert. Yeah, another year in the league, another year that he's just developed. And with the establishment right now of Miles Sanders and Boston Scott as the one to back in this offense, they're both exceptional pass catching backs. And now that Seattle took the Carlos Hyde boogeyman off of their hands, really the main running back that they might go sign would be Devontae Freeman. And hey, if they do that, then they're getting another good pass catching back. So I with the talent they have around them, we saw just like one game where Carson Wentz had someone downfield to throw to with Deshaun Jackson healthy, and he put up 2 touchdowns.
It was gorgeous.
Yeah, so they tripled down by bringing in Hightower and Rieger. I think that Wentz is going to light it up, and I think that we're going to talk about him in another section here a little bit. But yeah, I'm really high on Carson Wentz this year.
I like Wentz a lot too. I think he gets entirely too much shit for being the quarterback to basically lead his team up to the precipice of a Super Bowl, but he just didn't happen to play the last couple of games. And I think he takes way too much flack for not being the guy to take them over the edge. It's not like he was playing and they lost. He was just injured. And the Eagles have got to be like the number 1 candidate for positive injury regression, right? Like they just were walloped last season. So yeah.
I will say I like the Carson Wentz pick. I will say this is, I think, the last year that I'm going to give him the like injury benefit of the doubt. Because I feel like every year since he's come into the league, people are like, we know what Carson Wentz can do. Carson Wentz is amazing if he could just stay healthy. And he shows us what he can do, and then he'll get injured or he just doesn't have receivers to throw to. So I think I'm in on him this year, but I think this is the last year if he doesn't like put together 16 healthy games and doesn't, kind of play to the MVP potential that we've seen before and what we think he can be, then I think this might be the last year that I'm like would let myself get talked into Carson Wentz. Clark, who's a quarterback for you that not enough people are talking about?
Yeah, so I always feel weak in this position because I try just to check out of a lot of fantasy football talk during this time so that I can get my ranks and then see what everybody's talking about. But Drew Brees, for the past couple of years, has had some off seasons and hasn't been quite as good as he has been in his historically high pasts. He's going off the board in best ball leagues as the number 8 QB, so I guess people aren't completely sleeping on him. But are we sleeping on Drew Brees just recovering from injury and still being pretty good in a pretty loaded New Orleans Saints offense? I don't know. Carson Wentz is a lot better. I don't feel like.
No, I think it's good. I mean, I think that the addition of Emmanuel Sanders is awesome. It's just a reliable pass catcher. I do wish we could go back and kind of rehash that episode that we did where we discussed him. Pete, I think you have a top 24 receiver, and I don't think I pushed back on that as much as I should have. I think he'll be like kind of a viable CPR flex. But anyway,
I think Emmanuel Sanders is going to be wide receiver 1 this year, the best wide receiver in fantasy.
Okay. So I will take beer bet number 2
cool.
or worse. And their pass defense schedule is sort of middle of the road. It's number 22. Yeah, depending on where he is, if the market
he's going 12 is what is according to NFC.
Yeah, I'm probably not taking him. I think that's too early, and we already said that I'm big into Mayfield and Stafford. Yeah, and when.
But I get what you're saying, Clark. I feel like a lot of the public persona or a lot of the stuff about Drew Brees that's been put out there has been like his on the field actual football stuff. Is talking about how his throw power has gone down. He hasn't been able to like zip the ball as well as he used to. But those things don't really as long as he still puts stats up, which he's going to do. I don't care how hard he can throw the football anymore from a fantasy standpoint. So I do think that like the kind of narrative of his on-field play is as kind of trickled into like the fantasy realm where people are like, oh, I've heard a lot of negative things about Drew Brees, when it's reality. It's like, well, I don't really care. As long as he's not throwing interceptions and he's throwing touchdowns at a lot of yards, to hell if his throw power has decreased a little bit.
I don't know. I keep hearing Taysom Hill's the future. So
God. Oh,
I don't have an opinion on Brees. I'm focused on Hill.
It blows my mind anytime Sean Payton opens his mouth about Taysom Hill. How is a 30-year-old quarterback who's never played quarterback for you your franchise quarterback of the future? Someone riddle me that one. We'll talk about that in a different podcast. Jordan, who's a quarterback for you that people aren't chit-chatting enough about?
So we obviously brought this quarterback up earlier. I think people are indeed talking about him, but not in a positive light because it's always pile on Aaron during the off seasons these days. Aaron Rodgers, he has the 3rd easiest schedule per Fantasy Pros and for the Green Bay Packers. So I think that's pretty nice to see if you're a Green Bay fan. I think he's going to want to have a fuck you season. Aaron Rodgers is, we all just kind of watched The Last Dance. Michael Jordan was a pretty petty player, and Aaron Rodgers, I was getting mad Rodgers vibes because he is also a very petty player. Like, he will look for a chip if he needs to find one. Right now, his current ADP is QB 11. I think it's just good that he'll have another offseason with the young wide receivers that he had last season, another offseason in the LaFleur offense, trying to figure out the kinks of that. Last year was kind of an amalgam of the old stuff they used to do, and LaFleur was putting in stuff that he wanted to institute, so it got a little bit confusing. You would see certain times in certain games where it was just like really awesome. It looked great, like greatly scripted out through like the first quarter or for the first few possessions, and then it will start to get a little bit dicey. So hopefully they start instituting more full packages. And it kind of boils down to my overall draft strategy. So if you play redraft leagues with me and you're listening right now, here's my draft strategy this year. It is going to be targeting players with consistency. So basically I'm avoiding key players who might have switched teams or, with redraft leagues, this isn't too hard, rookies, because I think this offseason is going to be tough for some. And you're probably not going to get the same sort of off season coming up this fall. That's just me speculating right now. In late May, things might change over the course of the next 6 to 8 weeks. Who knows? But as of right now, that's going to be my strategy, is making sure I got guys who have played with each other and played under the same coach, have at least one of those factors in there.
If Aaron Rodgers was getting the Baker Mayfield treatment, like going in the mid-teens, I would have him everywhere. Not still in the top 10 for me as a draft position is still a little rich, but like if he was going like with Baker at 15 or Jared Goff at 16 or Stafford at 14, I would buy me so much of the Aaron Rodgers fuck you season, because I think that is, if I were a betting man, I would bet on Aaron. Like, I think it's more likely than not that Aaron Rodgers leads the NFL in touchdowns thrown this year, because I just think that he is going to put middle fingers to Matt LaFleur every time he takes the field and just call whatever audible he wants and just bomb it downfield until he gets traded to the Patriots. And then he's going to be great there. So we're all set.
See, that's the thing. It won't be middle fingers to LaFleur. It'll be middle fingers to all the local Packers media who are writing to get some clicks this offseason.
To anyone who's a Jordan Love super fan. That's who you'll be putting middle fingers to.
Yeah, this is kind of shooting my next segment in the foot, but my bold prediction is that Aaron Rodgers is going to be well within the top 5 of fantasy QBs this year, and he's going to be on every one of my teams. Right now, I'm showing him going as the QB 12, so just a couple of spots above Baker and Stafford, like y'all talked about. I think those are excellent later round guys. But if I can be the last person in my league to take Aaron Rodgers as my QB1 a little bit earlier than just pulling the weight as long as I absolutely can and probably cobble together a committee, I'm going to be stoked to do that. I live on Narrative Street, and I love living there. And Aaron Rodgers getting static all offseason for being very Jordan-like, which is not Jordan of the podcast, but Jordan as of Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan seems like a horrible human being, and everybody is just blowing him because you're such an asshole. I don't want to have anything to do with people like that. But for fantasy purposes, yeah, I think
want
Aaron
that,
Rodgers is
baby.
gonna lie it up this year.
Yeah, baby.
So I'm stoked to be the black sheep on this one. You guys are out of your mind, but I'm not going to re-outline why the Packers are a donkey organization again and again. But I do think that there's one
let
interesting
me tell
thing.
you,
Right.
Johnson, please don't attack.
Right.
If you want to, I mean, I will draw my sword. I don't think you're going to enjoy it though. But the point that I want to make here is that when Jordan was highlighting the strength of schedules, he said that Fantasy Pros has them as number 3. Now, when you look over at Sharp, he's got him as 20. The pass defense slate is the 8th hardest rather than the 3rd easiest. And so this is something important that I just want everybody to key into here. When you are constructing or when you're looking for strength of schedules, it's important to understand how they're being constructed. And the traditional method of looking at just win totals from the previous season is really ineffective. So we want to be looking at more informed ones based on Vegas win totals. That's the only point I'll make. And then we'll go back to a season of fighting over
no, I think that's fair. And I mean, my strategy for this type of analysis is like, let's make a movie out of it. It's like, one man disrespected by everyone around him, and he's not gonna take it anymore. That's it. Aaron Rodgers is gonna be fantastic.
Boom. That's the trailer. Sign me up.
I would like to outline one thing about strength of schedule too, is that generally with strength of schedule at this point of the season, nobody really knows a whole lot about anything. A lot of things can change between now and the start of the season. So,
oof, Warren Sharp taking some shots. All right.
Both of these things can be true, right? Like someone can be better at it than anyone else and have it still be like 50-50.
It's true.
Right? Yeah, and that's totally true. That's why you use up-to-date information.
All right, my QB to wrap up the quarterbacks who not enough people are talking about. My guy, I'm going way deep here. I am digging into the cesspool of quarterback options. I feel like not enough people are talking about Justin Herbert, because are we really sure that Tyrod Taylor is going to be like the clear incumbent starter and is going to be taking over the Chargers and leading this Chargers offense for so much of the season that it renders Justin Herbert unviable in fantasy? I'm not saying draft the guy, but I just think that we've seen every team is like, let's get the rookie on the field as soon as things go haywire. And if he puts together a semi-decent season, he's going as the QB 35, which means basically he's free. But I don't see, like, I think if he plays 8 or 9 games this year, I don't see a world where he like doesn't finish a top 25 QB, just given the fact that there's a lot of offensive weapons around there in Los Angeles with the Chargers. I don't know. I just feel like maybe I guess my question is like, are we sold on, are we really sure that Tyrod Taylor is like the clear-cut QB1 here and is going to be the clear-cut QB1 for enough of the year to make Justin Herbert to render him unstartable or unplayable?
My take on Justin Herbert is that he will start at some point over Tyrod Taylor.
Good take.
That's it. That's the take.
Yeah.
Flaming.
I think the thing that we might run into here is they come in with the 8th easiest pass defense slate, and if Taylor is given the reins to the offense, that I think will kind of set the stage for him to find success, at least for some time during the season. I probably wouldn't draft Herbert, but I would maybe keep my eye on him.
Yeah.
I think maybe a crazier thing is with this got me thinking about is it weird to use like your last pick in the draft on Cam Newton?
Okay, that's my bold prediction. That's my bold prediction. Okay. We're just going into bold predictions. Clark already said Aaron Rodgers is a top 5 QB. My bold prediction is Cam Newton's a top 25 quarterback lock. Like, if he's going to not sign with a team until the season actually starts, that means he's going to sign with a team whose quarterback gets injured and is looking to like still make a playoff push, which means they're going to be a good if Ben Roethlisberger gets injured again, are the Steelers going to go with Mason Rudolph again? Hell no. They're going to go get Cam Newton, and Cam Newton's going to be in that Steelers offense. And it's like, great. That's a top 25 production right there, hands down. Last pick of the draft, I would spend on Cam Newton without a doubt because he's going to get signed, and he's going to get signed to a team where they're like, Cam, save us, and Cam's going to save him because Cam's a good fucking quarterback.
Yeah, I think especially in 2 QB leagues, you won't be able to take him with your last pick because someone will probably be sharper than that. But taking him and just understanding that it's a long off season, and yeah, we are one torn rotator cuff away from some team taking
unless you're Carlos Hyde. Carlos Hyde doesn't need rotator cuffs.
That's true.
Or labiums. Which one was it? Labium?
Labium. Yeah.
Labium.
Still. Joke story.
No, there's no such thing as a labium. It's a labrum.
That's a labium.
No,
I know
don't
we're
science.
combining. Okay, well, we're combining female anatomy with something else here. I think we should move on.
Okay. But yeah, that's my bold prediction is that Cam, despite the fact that he doesn't have a team right now, is going to be a top 25 quarterback in fantasy this year.
If you're a redraft league that just has a ridiculously deep bench, like why not use a pick on him? And it's unfortunate, but like a starting QB generally goes down at some point. So if he's the guy that's getting a call, yeah.
Bing pot. Jordan, what's your bold prediction for the quarterback position this year?
My bold prediction kind of blends into what we were talking about a little bit earlier. I think Baker Mayfield will be a top 12 QB and just kind of back into relevancy. I think he got written off fairly quickly last season, which was only his sophomore year. He wasn't really given that long of a string. I think partially had to do with Lamar Jackson just blowing up in his sophomore year and leaving all the other quarterbacks in that draft in the dust. Well, save for Josh Allen. But I think that with him being ranked as QB 19 last season, that he will be able to move up a few notches. Again, this is going to be him having more familiarity with Odell, another season with Jarvis Landry. If they keep David Njoku around, that's another weapon who, for the first couple of games last season, looked like he was going to be a real factor in that offense. They obviously brought in Austin Hooper as well, so they're going to run a lot of 2 tight end sets if they keep Njoku around, or at least they should. And they also they fixed up the offensive line a little bit. They drafted Jedrick Wills, brought in Jack Conklin. That's something that will benefit Baker a lot. Hopefully he's not drifting around and making as many errant throws on long developing plays, and bring him back into top 12 fantasy relevance again.
I like it. I like it a lot. Nick, what's your bold prediction?
I think we're all kind of just running the same show here. We're bringing it back to somebody we talked about earlier. I'm just so pleased with what is on the table for Carson Wentz this year that I think he's got a shot at the top 5. I don't know if I'll go, say that he's a lock for it, but the way that they've built that team around him, their pass defense schedule, and like they face a number of teams that they're probably just going to pummel, but then there are some that are good with bad defense. So, they get to face Washington twice, the Bengals, the Giants twice, and the tip the hat back to Kyler Murray. They get to play the Cardinals in week 15. There's just so many things about this that I'm really, really high on Carson Wentz this year.
Nice. Good for you, Nick. All right, let's wrap this up. Who is the number 1 quarterback target for you this year in fantasy? Clark, start us off. Just anywhere in the draft, who are you like, I am going to be trying to get him on my squad?
Mine's Aaron Rodgers at QB 12. That's insane. I'll gladly take the chance.
Jordan, how about you?
At the right price, I want to get Patrick Mahomes. He finished as the QB2 last season, and he played 14 games and like wasn't all the way himself for like another 2 games. So like that's pretty good. Patrick Mahomes is a cheat code, and he and Lamar are like the only ones I think are worth drafting towards the second round. Maybe Dak a little bit after that.
Nick, yourself? Carson Wentz, maybe?
No, it's actually Ben Roethlisberger. I know that he's a bit of a risk with the elbow, and I can't stand him as a person, but he's being drafted as the QB 17, and they face the easiest slate of pass defenses this year. I think that's kind of too much to pass up. Juju, he gets to kick inside full time now, or majority of his routes. Deontay Johnson fully established himself as like their X receiver, and they're adding Chase Claypool to compete with James Washington.
They got weapons.
Yeah, I think it's set really nicely. And finally, James Conner, he's fully healthy right now, and he's great pass catching back. I think it's going to be an offense that we're kind of sleeping on.
That's a good one. My guy, I love Matt Stafford in fantasy. He's just always a guy you can get towards the back end of drafts who will like pretty regularly give you top 8 to top 5 production without fail as long as he stays healthy. I think a guy who is a sleeper who I'm also going to be targeting is Jimmy G. He's going QB 20 right now. He finished QB 13 last year. Is that right? QB 14 last year, excuse me. And with Kyle Shanahan just like cooped up in his room thinking of new crazy shit as we're all stuck in a quarantine, I kind of think this 49ers offense could be even crazier than what we saw last year. And so I'll buy me some Jimmy G if he comes at a real cheap discount, because people are always thinking about the run game in San Francisco rather than the passing attack. Plus he's good looking, and you always want good looking guys on your fantasy team.
I'm into it. 12 softest slate of pass defenses, and they got I really like the Brandon Ayuk draft pick. I think it's awesome.
And I think the holdup with Jimmy G is that he's not, well, let's say this diplomatically, doesn't process things as quickly as some others at the position. So having another year of doing the exact same thing, it's not unreasonable to think that he takes a step forward.
Cool beans. All right. Well, like what we said at the earlier start of the show, we're going to be doing running backs next week. Same topics. We'll bring a little more clarity to what this won't live up to the hype / fall out of the top 12 is for next week, or it'll just be a whatever you want it to be thing, which is, hey, who says no? Make sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcast. We are there: iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher. Leave us a review. Give us 5 stars. Leave us a comment. If you ask us a question in the comments, we'll make sure to answer it on the podcast. So, I mean, if you want to know, I don't know, what Jordan uses on his mustache, what kind of product he uses, then we can tell you. But only if you ask us that question and only if you listen. Follow us on Twitter at RB1 Podcast. You can follow myself at Pete M. Rogers. Follow Clark at NFL Clark. Jordan at Jordan_Smith27. And Nicholas at Ginger_Nick without a K. We will be back at you next week. Until then, peace.